Good morning. It's now 9:19 a.m. Ibrahim is standing by to speak to Lee Tian Xiang, Senior Research Analyst at Fund Supermart Malaysia. Ibrahim, over to you.
Good morning, Lee. Let's look at the foreign workers levy hike, which was big news for the past few weeks now. Which sector do you think will be impacted by the levy hike?
I think some of the sectors that will be affected by this announcement will be construction, manufacturing, and agriculture sectors. So these sectors they have a huge proportions of their foreign labor as a percentage of their total labor employment. So of course, the direct impact of this announcement will be an increase in their operating costs, which will weigh on their profit margin. But this is a case in general. I think the magnitude of the impact will still depends on two factors. So number one, whether they will be bearing the cost or passing it to the worker. So for example, the glove manufacturers, they typically pass the levy cost to the foreign workers. So in this case, the impact is somewhat minimal. And the second factors will be whether they have most of their operations in Malaysia. So this will be more applicable to the plantation sector. So those plantation companies that have significant operations in Malaysia, they'll be much impacted as compared to those that have diverse operations in other countries.
With the relation of the foreign workers, some of these rubber manufacturers that you mentioned have operations in Thailand. So let's shift our focus to Thailand. They just recently announced their fourth quarter GDP numbers. Did this result surprise you?
Well, actually, on an overall basis, the GDP number is not surprising for us. We do expect some weakness in the export growth given the global economic growth environment, as well as a slowdown in external demand. So, in fact, if you look at the export growth, they have been contracting since the beginning of 2015. So, on the consumption side, the implementations of stimulus package towards the end of the quarter has definitely helped to boost the consumption, especially among the low-income group like farmers. So this came as a much-needed support to them since they have been facing harsh conditions with the shrinking in income and revenue amid declining agriculture prices. So other factors that have been contributing to the growth in fourth quarters is the booming in the tourism sectors as well as the investments. So for the investment side, the government's effort in pushing infrastructure projects has definitely bore fruit. So this is reflected by the decent growth in their investment growth numbers.
Do you think that there will be a sustainable effort in trying to improve their external demand?
Actually, I think that at this juncture, their export growth will still be weak because of the external demand from especially the China side.
Do you have any other concerns on the Thailand economy?
Yeah, actually, although we have acknowledged the improved situations in Thailand, we are still cautiously optimistic as we note that the kingdom is still remains haunted by political uncertainty, weak export growth, like I mentioned just now, as well as a persistent earnings deterioration. So Thailand overall, they are still quite heavily dependent on its exports, and the subdued external demand from other nations might not bode well for their export segment going forward. So on the earnings side, they've been downgraded by analysts over the past 3 years. So even though right now the consensus number showed that the corporate earnings are expected to grow about 10% in 2016, we suspect that the earnings deterioration in Thailand corporation might still prevail. So one of the sectors that we are still cautious on is the financial sectors. So asset quality in the banking side, they have worsened, and this has been reflected in the creeping up of the NPL ratio. So with the locals having high debt burden and going through harsh conditions, we suspect there might be more NPL going forward. And for the banking side, we expect higher provisioning for the increase in NPL. So this will mean that their profit margin might be compressed, and this might lead to further cuts in terms of their earning estimate. So since the financial sectors that constitute almost 30% of the SCT index, we think that it might not be positive for the overall earnings growth for the SCT index going forward.
We saw the S&P issuing some statements on our Malaysian banks saying that the sector is rather well capitalized despite low NPL and despite low loans growth. Do you think banks in Thailand or the financial sector in Thailand can share that same sentiment? Are they well capitalized?
I don't think they are as well capitalized as Malaysian banks. So previously, there have been very easy learning scheme going on. So this has caused a lot of all those locals as well as business to actually borrow a lot of all those debt. So at this kind of juncture, Thailand, among its Asian peer, they have been having the highest debt burden as compared to its Asian peer. So going forward, it might be quite tough for them because right now their sentiment is not so optimistic, and for the lower income group, especially all those farmers, they're still facing a lot of harsh condition. So they might be having some difficulty in actually repaying back their debts. So this might also weigh down on the net interest margin of the banks as well.
What's your outlook on the currency, the Thai baht?
Yeah, I think right now for Thailand side, the Bank of Thailand, they still remain an accommodative approach. Even though right now their interest rate are standing at 1.5%, I don't think there's much room for them to cut further, but definitely they will be more accommodative and allowing their path to actually stay weak, because this will be much better for them in terms of their tourism sectors as well. So with a big with a weakening baht, their tourism sectors might be able to see some positive inflow of tourism from other nations.
That was Lee Tian Siang, Senior Research Analyst at Fund Supermart Malaysia.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.